Welcome to the Leading at the Next Level podcast with Dove Development and Consulting, the show built to provide ongoing support for your leadership journey. I have a grand opportunity today. I'm so excited about this. Over the last several months, Cindy and I've done interviews around the leadership legacy experience where we had Mark Cole, CEO of Maxwell Leadership, come into Harrisonburg, Virginia to wrap up as our keynote speaker. We've been able to interview partners and we've interviewed all the executive panelists for that event. And we even interviewed Mark. Today, along that theme, I've got the distinct pleasure to interview Chris Robinson. Chris is the Executive Vice President of Maxwell Entrepreneurial Solutions, and he has a book coming out soon that we're going to talk a lot about in this conversation called From Drift to Drive. And I got to chat with Chris a little bit on a one-on-one basis, but in a group setting just a few days ago in Richmond, Virginia, and got the behind the scenes. But before I dig into that, Chris, I'd love for you to share a brief background or an overview of your professional background, your experience in the industry, and then I'm going to take an opportunity to sway you on our side just a little bit before we dig into it.
I love it. I love it. Well, hey, thank you so much for having me on today. Truly a privilege to be with you again, twice within like a week's time period. Had a great time with you there in Richmond, Virginia. And so thank you so much for all the work and effort you and Cindy put in to help us host that event there live in Richmond. So thank you for that. A little bit about my background is I am a personal growth junkie. I fell in love with personal growth and development in my early 20s when I realized that was what was helping me get promoted on the job. And so I dug deep into it because I fell out of traditional school after being kicked out of college 6 times. I know some people are going, oh my goodness, how in the world did you get kicked out 6 times? The better question is, how did I get back in? And I had an undeveloped skill set of selling. So I went to go sharpen that axe. I took on a series of different sales jobs, from selling perfume and cologne on the street, futons, furniture, you name it. I have been in that selling industry. Ended up selling stocks, bonds, mutual funds as a financial advisor. Ended up going into a call center, which is where I really kind of got my grounding. And inside this call center, I had the opportunity to go with a company that grew from 18 employees to about 800 in 6 years. And I became a senior sales manager for that organization. But all of that was precipitated by watching videos of John Maxwell, implementing those principles in the workplace, and just standing out just simply because I was adding value to people.
Wow, I've got chills, Chris, as I hear that, because you've got me on the 6 schools. I went to 2 different schools. I never got kicked out. I just quit going. So
Right.
between Cindy and I together, we don't hold even an associate degree, and I no longer care.
Right.
But just like you, I mean, our relationship, our mentorship from John Maxwell came from books and cassette tapes 25 years ago, and it's just grown over the years and so on. That's powerful. Now, I often say to people that taking that sales manager role and actually leading are 2 wildly different things. For you, what was your clear purpose? And it kind of stems off the premise of my recent book. What was your clear purpose for accepting real leadership responsibility?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it started out very shallow. It started out very shallow. I wanted the money. I wanted the position. Like, that was it. I'd love to tell you it was something highly aspirational and noble, but it wasn't. But as I began to study leadership, to learn about leadership, and to learn about adding value to people, something shifted. And so, before that, I was really trying to be the superstar salesperson, wanted to be the superstar manager. But I remember distinctly reading in the 21 Laws, and it showed this graph. On page 5 was showing, a graph that showed your success dedication on a scale of 1 to 10. And, if you got to an 8, that's typically what gets you promoted. But then on page 6, it showed this graph that, hey, if you develop your leadership ability, then now, and your skill is over there, you've exponentially grown your potential. And something shifted in me that said, man, what if I stopped trying to be the star? What if I became a star creator? And when I decided to make that shift to try to help others become the star, and figured out that I would be more valuable to an organization if I could create more of me versus just being one of me, that changed everything in the world for me.
This is unscripted, but I've got to ask the question. What's the fulfillment been like for you looking back, and especially now in your role, knowing
Yeah.
the numbers of people that you impact globally and seeing the difference doing that makes in their lives?
Oh my goodness, there's nothing greater than that. I think about, just as I'm promoting for this book and going on all these different podcasts. I was just recently on a podcast with a client that hired me when they weren't making any money. And, he had said, open it up saying, man, I'm here today and my net worth is triple what it could have been based off of one phone call that we had. I think about some of the people now that are buying the books in bulk because they've been promoted on their jobs and now they're VPs, they're presidents of organizations, they own their own companies. And I look back at this trail of people that I've helped along the way and just played a small part. But looking at that, there's nothing that gives me greater joy than being able to say, "Oh my goodness, I've truly added value to people."
Chris, after we left you and Roddy in Richmond last week, we stopped by and visited with a mentor who came into my life in 1998, just before, and it was God's timing because it was right around the same time I met Cindy. And he said to me, Wes, I've tried to do the same thing for hundreds of people in my career. You just listen. And I said, but if you'd have stopped one shy of me, I might be a drunk running a press in a manufacturing facility on second shift still.
Right. Yep.
And now it's a calling. I've absolutely got to pay forward. It's a responsibility because he's put that on me. So I love the way you explained that.
Yeah.
So you were in great roles, and you've mentioned your exposure to John Maxwell over the years. What really motivated you to get involved in that leadership development training and not just rely on the authority that comes with the title or position?
Well, I mean, again, it was shallow. That was my way to make the money. Is like I had to get better. So that was truly the motivating factor. Again, I would love to sit here and sound holy as possible, but it's just not the case. My initial motive was for title, position, money. I wanted to be the boss, right? But over time, as I learned more, I understood more, and that shifted and changed my direction. It shifted and changed my motive. And when those motives changed, what I found out when I stopped chasing money and I stopped chasing profits, profits started chasing me. When you chase the purpose, the profits will chase you.
That's fantastic. Now, Chris, I'll have your book From Drift to Drive linked wherever anyone accesses the podcast, the streams, whatever. What does it mean to drift, and how do leaders recognize when they're in it?
Yeah, what it looks like to drift, it looks like busyness, right? It sounds like excuses, and then it feels like comfort. If I had to break it down, all right. And then we would hear phrases like this: "I'm too busy. I'll do that in a different season." Well, I'm doing better than most. Well, it is what it is. Well, that's the way that we've always done it. That's what it sounds like. So when we're in a drift, it's a fogginess. It's a place of comfort where we have come to a place where we've done just enough. We've done the work to get to the place, and now we're just kind of breathing and resting on our laurels. And so, if you go back to the original meaning, and I talk about this book, I talk about complacency, but if you go back to the original meaning of complacency, it means careless security. Careless security. And so this is something that we feel like is comfortable and secure, but we're careless with it and we end up losing it. And what I see and why I focused on this particular topic is because I see this in top performers all around the world. We get the success, we begin to gather the things, and yet there's still a lack of fulfillment that's not there. And it's because we've attained the success, but what we're really looking for at that point is we're looking for significance. And so when you can make that shift from success to significance, it makes a great, great difference in your world.
Now, one of the things that I've appreciated about interacting with everyone in Maxwell Leadership, and I'll say specifically you and Mark Cole, is you don't just tell me what to do. You give me a framework for doing
Yeah,
that. Now,
yeah.
talk about the 7-step framework that you've built into the book that helps leaders move from drift into drive.
Yeah, well, it's 7 steps, and I'll tell you the 7 steps, but I can break it down to 2 steps that really kinda shortcuts this. It doesn't shortcut it because I don't want you to think, "Well, I don't need these other steps," because in its completeness, it's gonna keep you moving in the direction that you wanna go. So, the two-step process is real simple. Learn a little bit, do a little bit, all right? Just go ahead and, hey, you know that you wanna go in a direction, go ahead and begin to learn about that, and then go ahead and do something about it, take action. But the 7 step process, if I look back at anything of significance that I've done in my life, I have integrated these 7 steps into getting there. The first step is clarity, meaning that you have to be clear on what it is that you want. You cannot have what you cannot see. And anytime that we begin to drift or we begin to just kind of stagnate or move slower, it's because we have a lack of vision of where we want to go. The second step is our gathering phase. The gathering phase is where we go when we gather information about the direction that we want to go. And we do that through books, videos, audios, courses, conferences. And that is how we front load the knowledge in order to get to where we want to go. But the third step is the most important. It's the filtering stage because in our past, our success was really based upon the information that we had access to. Today, it's based upon filtering the information that you have access to. So those in the gathering phase oftentimes feel, confused or overwhelmed because they're not filtering properly. It'll look like this. They're reading a book on one topic, watching videos on another topic, listen to an audio on another topic, going to a conference on another a topic, and then getting coaching on a different topic. Going, why am I not getting there? You're not filtering. You're not filtering. So we want to line those things up. The fourth step after filtering is guidance. And that's really about getting insight and wisdom from those that have done what we've wanted to do, want to do. The fifth step would be relationships. It's getting around like-minded people that are going that direction that you want to go. The sixth step in this one is action. So you say, Chris, in the first one you said learn a little bit, then go ahead and do something. Why is there 5 steps in between, this one? Well, action, if you're going through the proper process of being clear, gathering, filtering, getting guidance in relationships, action should be a whole lot easier to do because you've got all the foundation in place to be able to make that solid founded actionable steps. And then of course the 7th step is evaluation. We have to reflect on our progress through honest assessment, and when we do that, that gives us a greater clarity to go back through that cycle again harder and faster than we did before.
That's stinking powerful. As you explained step number 3, Chris, we get all these different sources and so on. I'm a hillbilly, okay? I grew up in the hunting world and so on, and I've heard the expression often that you can only chase one rabbit. If you chase too many rabbits, you don't catch any of them.
Right. Yeah.
And similar concept, different verbiage.
That's right. That's right.
I've typically in this process asked the question, what would you like the community to know about your company? And I'm going to change it up a little bit because Maxwell Leadership speaks for itself. You do an amazing job there. And before we wrap this up, I'm going to share something that had 2 things that you've taught me and you didn't even know it. So you can walk away with that. But what would you like anybody catching this to really know about what led you to write the book? Because writing a book is stinking hard.
Yeah, it is. It is very difficult. A lot more difficult than I anticipated. Not so much the book writing process itself was difficult, but then the backside of it, the actual getting this book into the hands of readers is difficult. And so, it's a push, and it's pushing me outside of a comfort zone to do things that I haven't done, but it's also showing me a new way for me to be able to practice and hone skills that, help me in all areas of my career. But what really prompted me to do it was I was, working with a consultant to really bring into Maxwell Leadership. And while there, they began to prime me, ask me questions about, if I were to write one, what would I write on? What problem would I try to solve? And I just engaged in the process. And, sitting on a bench waiting on an Uber the next day, the entire framework and the outline for the book came to me. I go back in, I present it, and they said, "Oh, that's it. And so I went to work on it. And so for readers of this book, what I really want them to know is, that there is more life ahead of you. Yes, you've achieved. Yes, you've done some things, but you were built for more than what you've done today. And even if things look dark right now, hey, there's greener pastures ahead.
I, I just had a conversation around that same topic with a young man at the gym this morning. As I was leaving, he was coming in. We've developed a friendship, and that was the piece that I had to sow into him. Dude, I don't care what anybody says. You're not just A.
Right.
You make a difference, dude. Now,
Right.
you've done so many, and we could talk about Maxwell Leadership, but I would rather paint it to you in this question. Talk about a recent project, campaign, something that you've had the chance to either spearhead or just be involved with that you've really seen a tangible impact on the people you serve. You talked about that purpose earlier.
Yeah.
Give me some rubber meets the road.
Yeah, well, I'm doing that just today. I mean, just prior to this call, I was leading a staff training on the 17 qualities of a team player, just like I did for companies and organizations years and years and years, leading it just that way. And so, hopping off that call, and I've had many members of the staff going, "Oh my goodness, why haven't we done this in so long? I'm so thankful for this. I needed this." And just that alone keeps me going. But not just teaching what we do, but actually doing what we do is all the difference maker in the world. And so I love that what I get to do and who I get to do it with.
And you get to do it at a wide scale. It's absolutely impressive. When I chatted with Mark a couple of weeks ago, he commented about, yeah, I was just with the president of Argentina.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, why is he willing to talk to me? And I know why. It's because we've got a common theme and we reach people. So it's humbling. And
Yeah.
wow.
Indeed.
Talk about the purpose that drives that, not just for you, but the whole organization. And specifically when you really aligned yourself, you and I were peers, and you're in a
Yeah.
killer world-class role now. How did you see the values and the purpose of Maxwell Leadership align with your own personal values and purpose that you said, yeah, this is the right fit?
Yeah, well, it goes all the way back to those videos back in 2001. I mean, if I look at my life now and the timeline of how long I've been studying Maxwell principles, I've spent more time learning and living Maxwell principles in my life than I haven't. So it was about 2 years ago I crossed over that point to where, I was 20 years old when I started. I'm 45 now, and I've been studying those principles more in my life than I haven't. And so I think it was kind of one of those things where this was the direction I was supposed to go. And when I joined the team, I knew that I knew that I knew that this was the home and the right environment for me and what I wanted to do. And, it's been, a decade and a half of invited people through the Maxwell organization.
That's fantastic. And so many parallels, because it was in 2001 for me and Cindy as well that
Oh,
we
wow.
started that process. Now we joined the team. We became part of the organization in 2015. So you got 4 years on us there.
Right.
But
Yeah.
pretty glad for the opportunity. Real quick, I'm going to share the two things that I've learned from you that have been
Oh,
just absolutely world changing. And then I'm going to tee it up for a question.
okay.
One of the things I heard you give me, that not just say to do it, but tell me why it mattered. You taught me how to speed up Audible. You said, hey, we
Yeah.
process 450 words a minute when we hear, but
Right.
most people only speak 150 to 175 words a minute, and we drift, right?
Right. Yep.
You use that word. And since that point, it was at an IMC in Orlando. I've done Audible at 3 times speed, and it's absolutely changed my retention, my processing, everything. Praise
Yeah.
God for that. Thank you.
Right.
The other thing, and Cindy and I are right now working to do it. We've written 200 lessons, 200 hours worth of content in the last 6 or 7 years. It's massive. But you said, get good at one keynote a year. You can't do everything good.
Yep.
And we're working hard to make sure that, hey, let's add one new thing each year, maybe two, since it's two of us. But how do we not do all of it, but dial in? And it's been world changing. Now, the reason I'm sharing that, one, is I want you to know, appreciate your impact.
Yeah.
But I also want to hear what advice you would give somebody that's not even in the leadership game. They're young, they're aspiring, they want to advance in their career, and they want to lead, not just be that supervisor or manager that you and I were chasing when it was more about, let's just pay the stinking bills.
Right. Yeah. I mean, one, I think that's great. I mean, I love that you were able to implement the idea of, using Audible and speeding that up to triple speed. The rate of consumption, a lot of people think that they can't retain that information, but it actually helps you remember it more whenever you're moving in that speed. So there is no room for drift. And then focus on the one keynote per year, or the one topic per year. That really helps to develop something really good. What happens with the amateur speaker is they do 20 different topics in a year, and none of them ever really get good. I've done almost, I guess we booked 50 podcasts, but guess what? Those 50 podcasts have been on this one book. Okay. And so we focus on that and live that out. But to the person that wants to grow as a leader, I would say the best advice that was given to me, and I shared this in Richmond as well too, was simply become a reader. And this advice was given to me from a billionaire back in 2007. And I asked him, what's the one thing that would make the greatest impact in my life? And without any hesitation, he said, read. Now I know you're listening going, well, Chris, I can read. I know how to read. But look, he said that at the age of 27, he was an illiterate bricklayer. And by age 75, he was a billionaire, and he attributed his billions of dollars to reading over 5,000 books in his lifetime. And so that was one of the first phases of getting really serious about reading, because I didn't read an entire book, in high school. I didn't read my first full book until I was 19 years old, selling perfume and cologne on the street. We had to come in and read out of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich every morning, and then I probably didn't read another book for another couple years. And it wasn't until I began to really shape what I was reading, get intentional about reading, that all the change in my life began to come.
So when you say that, because you said it in Richmond a year ago, how often do you have somebody say, but Chris, I don't like to read?
Yeah, that's great.
I don't care. In transparency, I don't like to read either, but I like failing less.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Somebody says I don't like to read. Hey, look, I didn't like to read either, but my life reflected that. And so now there's other things that we can do, like Audible. We can do book summaries. We can do different things. But I would encourage you to build the muscle of reading, because when you begin to read, as this billionaire told me, says that your mind cannot tell the difference between reality and what you tell it. He goes, and so when you begin to read, you're reading stories of people that have overcome odds that you want to overcome, and you begin to believe it. He says your mind can't tell the difference. And so reading is a critical skill set to develop.
Yeah, 100%. It was absolutely world changing. Like you, I never read a full book all the way through high school. And I remember being angry when I read the 21 Laws for the first time, not at John and the content. I was angry that nobody had ever given me something like that actually helped me move forward.
Right.
What the heck?
Right.
Hey, this is off script. You've referenced Napoleon Hill. So I'm going to ask the question. I've been wondering the whole time that I've seen your title in his book. I think it was published in 2011, Outwitting the Devil. He references the danger in drifting.
Yeah.
Did that influence in any way your idea for the title?
It didn't. After I had wrote it, somebody says, oh, is it based off of Napoleon Hill's drift? And then all of a sudden I heard the audio playing in my head of the drift and the dangers of it. But it wasn't the basis of it. It was really, the basis of it was, I was really trying to solve for the problem of underperformance, with the root cause really being, complacency. And as I began to contemplate it, that drift, I realized so many different areas of my life where I was unintentionally drifting, because now I had this new awareness and I was looking for, I'm going, oh my goodness, I'm drifting here, I'm drifting there. And so that's where it came from, was really from the root of trying to solve for underperformance.
Well, I'm really excited about having it in my hands and being able to read it. I'm going to Audible it too, because I'll do it many times that way. Reading
That's right.
Gosh, the last question I'll ask, it's not even on the list that I submitted in for Lorna to work through, is what should I've asked you that I haven't asked you?
Yeah. What should you ask me that's a good question. Where they can get the book.
So I posted that. That'll be linked everywhere.
Right, there we go.
driftthedrivebook.com.
Yeah, there we go. No, but I think there's nothing in particular. And again, I've done so many podcasts here recently. You're asking, questions. that I think line up to give the listeners what they need to be able to take something and take action. Because I never ever want to speak and just give you motivation or just energize you. I want you to be energized, but I want you to have practical application of something you can do. And I think you've helped us with that today with your questions.
Well, Chris, I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate the time that I had with you and Roddy last week in Richmond. More importantly, I appreciate the example I watch you set for so many people. You're a blessing in our lives.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, if there's nothing else that you've got, I'll close it out and we'll make sure we're taking care of people, honoring their time.
Yeah.
So if you're catching this Leading at the Next Level podcast and you have a need for continuing education credit, send me an email at admin@dove-development.net and I can hook you up with a 45-day all complete access, no cost to our full Leading at the Next Level program. I think it's got north of 160 lessons in it now, all approved by the Society for Human Resource Management, Human Resource Certification Institute. Love to sew into you. If it's something that serves you, we can talk about long-term access and so on and so forth. But that said, Chris, thanks so much for taking the time. Look forward to seeing you again soon, and we'll call it done, sir.
All right. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.